A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Vipin, and today I would like to, probably talk about how do we maximize the efficiency on server and storage migration and the associate strategies. I have very limited participants today, so I probably would love to have the conversation, more of a conversation rather than a sort of a presentation today. So feel free to, kind of pose the question if you have any, or probably we can ask the moderator to unmute your mic. And if you have any questions, we can take it and then we can probably answer it. Yeah. So I'll just give one more minute to see if anybody more joining in. So we can probably start from there. So while we are giving that a minute, so we have a poll on your screen. I would encourage you to, kind of respond to that question what my colleague Fred, who is moderator for today, kind of posted on the screen for you. All right. So with that, let me introduce myself. So my name is Vipin, and I've been accompanied by Fred today, helping me with kind of operations of this webinar today. So I have about 24 years of experience, worked in corporate like Dell Technologies, VMware, as managing many of these migrations, consumption, subscription model business for these companies. Also worked in RSA as a practice manager for APJ Theater from the security management and compliance portfolio. So here I would like to share some of the experiences what I have, and then share some of the insights from a server and storage migration strategies perspective. This is what I lived for many, many years, helping our large enterprises to do that effective migration. So hopefully you will get some benefits out of this, and we would love to hear from you during the conversations, or if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So I can probably answer those one-to-one basis as well. So with that, let me move to the first slide. So I found some of the surveys, right? So, this is a good idea to start the conversation with. So, and these are credible surveys, which I found it. Around 64% of the IT professionals in large corporations kind of seeing legacy IT infrastructure and kind of outdated technologies is kind of stopping them to do IT transformation because of the dependencies and the complexity associated with it. Now, about 51% of the people reported that, kind of abandoning or kind of not doing the transformation because of the challenges, because they don't know how to navigate through. I'm talking about 30,000 workload, 50,000 workload migrations, right? A lot of complexity, especially in the banking, finance, and the insurance, and various other healthcare businesses, right? So complexity is huge. So these are the top two reasons what we have seen, or what we see through these surveys, rather, for people to hesitant to kind of going after the migrations or modernization, right? What exactly data center migration? Right? So let me give you a perspective about it. And typically, it is known as lift and shift, but there are multiple other ways of doing migrations, right? So, so if just for the sake of getting everybody on the same page, it's kind of moving your existing assets, what you have. That includes your compute, storage, network, your probably on-premises environment, your cloud. And typically people call it, as I said, lift and shift, not really lift and shift in all aspects and all the migrations, right? From a source to a target. And then what are those three main things or key tasks in data center migration? So if you see on the screen, so you have application migration. storage migration, database migrations. All these are really, really complex and time consuming if you don't have the right strategy and right plan in place, right? So if you see on the bottommost paragraph I've written, using specialized tools and services is crucial for an efficient data transfer and infrastructure setup. That's where we at ZENfra came up with something called a ZenPack. So I'll give you more detailed about it during the conversation to the end of it. How do we see that? How our organization really helping those large scale customers, Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, to do that seamless migration, right? So we have a product called ZENfra. This is nothing but a data management platform where you have all the data sources, your compute, storage, network, your software bill of materials, your user data, your licenses, your maintenance informations, you name it, your manual CSV files, your CMDB documents, your user informations, put all of these things into this data platform. And then with the AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities, we come up with 6 different product suite. What you see on the green segment there, ZRAC, ZObs, ZFinops, ZCBI, ZENfra Intelligence, ZMake, right? Now putting all these things together, because every customer will have a different use case for a particular migrations or many other IT infrastructure requirements. So we come up with something called ZenPack, which is more fine-tuned for a specific use case for a customer. So something like a 360, something like observability, right? So if you think of, if you really want to see how is your data center looks like when it comes to all this infrastructure together, and if you want to have a single pane of glass of all this information, that's basically Success 360. It gives you a lot of insights. You can tweak this, you can customize this the way you want, including the main menus and options, the charts and the dashboards. There are a lot of out-of-box solutions plus more customized solutions. And putting all these things together, we have the project management product suite. Now, let's, as I said, this is more of a data platform to product suite to ZenPack. Now let's go back a little bit on the migration side, what we were talking, right? What are those driving factors for organization to go after for migration sites? It could be related to cost reduction. Their current inefficient data center might be making it more expensive for them. And then probably organizations are looking for, how do I reduce the expenses, which probably related to energy, maintenance, and real estates, right? So that would be one of the factor. Technological advancement, because as I said before, if they're using a legacy systems, right? So they want to have more newer, modernized, efficient hardwares and softwares. That could be another reason for customers to opt for migrations. Then capacity expansion. That includes, more space, optimized power, cooling, maybe more on the capacity side of the infrastructure, what they have with storage or network. They want to have better bandwidth, better network connectivity, more scalable solutions, what they have. So those could be a reason for another migration factor. Now, consolidation, right? They could be having multiple data centers kind of distributed across. If they really want to have primary, secondary, and then the DR site, their security vault, all sort of things, make it more consolidation. Or it could be because of the mergers and acquisition. They have 2 companies coming together. They really want to consolidate all those things to and kind of reduce the operational expenses, reducing the cost and bringing in more efficiency and scalability, right? Disaster recovery is another reason. Probably they may have a primary and replica site, but they may not have a regional level or international level disaster recovery sites for, coming back into more resilience. And if there is a disruptions, right? It could be very typical power disruptions also. It could be from a business continuity perspective as well. Performance optimization. So because of the, as I said, bandwidth or any other issues, they really want to go for a better performance-driven, hardware gears to meet their needs, right? As we are seeing a lot of modernization happening, and speed becomes one of the important factor to solve many of the problems what we have in the environment. A regulatory compliance, it could be HIPAA or it could be various other country-specific compliance needs. which would really require them to kind of migrate the servers, right? It could be cloud or co-location. So if you heard, companies like Equinix, Lumen, or Rackspace sort of companies, right? So there are multi-tenants sort of environments. They want to take the benefits of kind of putting things together rather than having a dedicated data center, right? Or it could be cloud adoption. So they really want to have seasonal kind of cloud outburst where they can, kind of meet the business needs when there is a need at a particular season. So there could be various reasons, as I said, the companies would be looking for migration. So let me take a pause here and, probably kind of have Fred, if you have any poll, it could be a good time to understand from our audience perspective.
Yeah, Vipina. So I'm going to launch our first poll.
Yep. I'll give a minute for you to. There are about 4 pages there. You can just go through and then, if you can share your responses there. All right, so let me move on. Now, if you look at from a storage and server migration strategies perspective, and I've put together in a diagrammatic way to make it a little easier for you to consume this. So if you look at your current IT snapshot, right, you have a lot of asset inventories, application configuration data, your performance information, as I said, CMDB, SLA, you may have different levels of SLAs and organization level objective within the organization, various architectural information, SME knowledge, what they have from their KB articles and other things. So that's pretty much your current IT snapshot. And then, you kind of need to go through a phase, which is discovery and assessment or analysis. You kind of put in all the application performance infrastructure information. And then you kind of arrive at what could be your best migration strategy, right? If I see from the bottom to the top, starting from retire, kind of retiring some of the servers, what you don't use it now, or maybe you want to retain, but you don't want to move into another data center, or maybe not looking for changing that. So you kind of retain the way it is. Relocate, as I mentioned, could be more of a lift and shift. Rehosting from one environment to another environment. And maybe you probably need to do a tech refresh. So for that matter, repurchasing your environment, storage assets or server assets, and kind of moving into that. Replatforming, right? Application replatform. One particular platform the applications might be running, you really want to go into a microservice architecture, maybe moving into DevOps sort of an environment, right? Replatforming or refactoring when it comes to sizing or types of hardwares, what you need to look at it. So from the bottom to the top, if you see that the number of hours or the efforts increases from retire to refactor, right? Refactoring, it could be containerization. You might be looking at more orchestrations through Kubernetes or maybe serverless computing, all sort of things, right? So there could be a lot of aspects which drives your migration strategies, and that's where the efforts also increases, because you may really want to look at from a containerization perspective, your Docker and other factors comes into, right? And then, API integrations you really want to do with many of the third-party applications rather than having, data is being pulled out or kind of maintained locally in your databases, right? Now I put together a kind of a diagrammatic way how you see this entire picture, right? Starting from discovery. So you see on the left side, you have retain and retire. And then what are the different phases? If you're going through rehost, what are the different phases you go through, be it your manual install and manual deploy and other things. And if it is rehosting, probably looking at automation through probably cloud infrastructure, or maybe using some of the greatest of the migration tool. And pretty much everything ends up in validation, transition, and production, right? Replatforming would be more of determining what should be your new platform looks like. If there is any need for modifying your underlying infrastructure, what you have. Repurchase is something, probably moving from a perpetual sort of a licensing model to SaaS-based model, which many of the companies are offering. So you're kind of moving into that environment, which might require you to do some changes in the way systems are being working right now, right? Or it could be a repurchase that requires you to do a manual install and setup, right? More of a greenfield deployment, right? And then decoupling everything what you are doing and redesigning everything, developing from scratch, because you may have to have more AI-driven capabilities into it, and that's where you are going into more application, lifecycle management, or maybe software development lifecycle, maybe more of a DevOps, and then finally integrating all of that together. So this could be a way we can think of having different aspects of migrations. And I put in the bottom, if you see that custom off-the-shelf COTS, this is more of a third-party solution which is inbuilt into your hardware with applications into it. So it becomes a little bit easier for you, or maybe a software as a service model, right? Office 365 or Salesforce or your Oracle server, right? So those sort of thing, which is kind of software as a service, if you're opting for it. So there are different forms or different ways you think about your migration strategies, right? Now, I talked briefly about ZENfra before, right? So it's really complex, and it's not an easy thing that think, okay, let me put together a plan for in place, and then kind of, okay, let me move things faster, right? So I'll walk you through what are the different phases, what are the different concerns during a migration, what sort of preparations you need to do really when you are thinking of having a data center migration, right? So for which we have come up with something, a project management module within ZENfra, which helps you to run through the entire discovery assessment, your analysis and planning, risk, what are the risks and what are the remediations which you need to go through, and kind of workload profiling and optimization of it, kind of coming up with a strategy for development that requires your, including your run books and then running after your migration services, right? So from a single pane of glass, you can have all the data to be discovered, and then AI ML engine, what we have in ZENfra, kind of streamline it, kind of normalize the data for you, and then you get required insights for you to create those application dependency through phenomenal, visualization capabilities of your what server is talking to what application is talking to what servers. So you can create your bundles, you can create your wave groups in terms of defining your schedules migrations, right? So that's something you can think of. And then planning and strategy, right? So that's a crucial piece, because for me, throughout my experience of doing multiple migrations, running after with a huge amount of team, right? Including the end customers, system integrators, third-party tools, and then migration hands-on team, or could be another partner in between who's kind of doing all these budgetary plans and other things. So having a good plan and strategy is very important when you have multiple stakeholders involved, because I would say in my experience about 80%, 70 to 80% of the effort goes in planning and strategy, not in terms of hours, because your migration would be scheduled on a weekend basis, or maybe different time zones based on your business needs. But what I'm saying from an efforts perspective, it's more of brain needs to go into the planning and strategy. Once you have a really good strategy, it's more of executing, following up the path and best practices, what kind of plans you have arrived at it, and giving it to the hands-on team, and they kind of running after this and just making sure that right tickets are being raised when there is a roadblock or a troubleshooting situation. But having a strong plan, a project plan, is very important for having a successful migration strategy. So how do we go about it, right? First is about leadership alignment or assignment. So make sure that you have a good, strong project manager with authority to lead and coordinate the migration across the department, because we really don't want in a migration event to do a lot of gold plating, right? Things change over the period of time. An application owner comes and say, oh, you know what, this is not what I was looking for. Let's do this. Well, I'm not looking at changing this from this data site, this site to another site. Of course, we need to be agile. We need to be more flexible, but it should not drive and eating up all your, contingency funds, what you have specialized for, kept it for these migration, right? So having a strong project management person is very important for this. And you also sometimes what happens, I have experienced it, that okay, they want to move, but it could be that new location may have some restrictions on the licensing. It might be expensive. Service agreements would be different, right? So those factors comes into a play when it comes to contract evaluation, right? So shipments of things, the service level agreements from the OEMs for those regions. So those kind of things will come into a play when you have on-premises movement. And documentation centralization. So having a centralized repository, having all your CMDB files and other things kept it, and your best practices, your network layouts, your databases, everything should be accessible for right stakeholders at the right time. And then you start with your detailed project plan, right? So your comprehensive migration plan, including your methodologies, that includes your DAP, your run books, your execution strategy, your post-migration checklist, handover, and so on and so on, right? That includes your budgets, roles, and responsibilities, risk mitigation strategies, right? Communication strategies, stakeholder assessment, who needs to be informed, arriving at your RACI metrics for doing such kind of a plan. And then finally, review the plan before you make the execution, right? Review with necessary stakeholders, get their buying, make sure that your command center is operational, your IT support team is available for you to do whatever required. You may have a third-party solutions being installed on these devices. When you do the cutover, are you really getting the necessary support? You kind of raising those proactive severity tickets with these parties who are involved, helping your customers to achieve their business goals. So list down all of that, doing a proactive ticket, because in my experience, I can tell you, having multiple vendors, multiple solutions being available, having those support team in standby would be of great help when you do a real migration effort. Now, importance of assessment. So ZENfra as a product, what we have from our organization, is one of the best tool and being used in multiple locations where we have done these migrations, large scale migrations, right? Because it makes your life easier when it comes to assets. All that what you need to do is that whatever logs you have, you can manually import it, or you can have FTP site integrated into it. Your third party's application data can be imported into it. You can even have an API integration where you can directly collect all the logs from these devices. And the beauty is that once you do that, the system has that capability to show you entire visibility of your organization infrastructure and how you need to take forward for a migration. So I'm really thrilled to share this probably to the end of this webinar today. Probably look at it, how you can, kind of makes your hands dirty through trial licenses and exploring some of the options what we have through our Success 360 package, for a specific duration of time to use this and see how effectively you can make your work easier, right? So when it comes to, as I said before, assessment, right? Hardware and software inventory, your workload analysis. So when I was working with VMware, managing and leading entire America's enterprise region for VMware migrations end-to-end, I think this is a very crucial piece when it comes to workload analysis, right? So customer may know the dependencies, but you as a migration specialist or a team really need to have those, kind of conversation with application owners, have those SME interviews done to make sure that you have a really good checklist to make sure there's nothing is left behind, because you are the trusted advisor, you are the trusted partner for that organization to do that migration. So you probably needs to be more accountable, responsible to do this workload analysis, right? When it comes to the move groups, the cutover, the IP address changes at the end when we do it, right? And then, as I said, network assessment. The bandwidth is very important because some of these native tools, what you use it, really require some level of a bandwidth which is predefined, preset. If you look at from an HCX perspective, from VMware solutions, or maybe if you look at various other tools, you need to also look at the latency bottlenecks, what you have through when you're doing a replication assisted vMotion for that matter, or you're doing some, kind of a bulk migrations when you need to push a large chunk of data, terabytes of data from one source to another, making sure that there's nothing breaks, because it might take hours of time for you to put that data into the target site, and the data is corrupted. then you cannot really do the cutover, right? You have to do a rollback for your migration. So that will lose the credibility. So that's where very important to do complete assessment of your network, your workload, and your hardware and software inventory, and of course security, right? We don't want things to break or least amount of security when you move things there. And things are complicated. The right person should have the right level of access to these crucial data, what we are migrating to. So all those security reviews are very important when you make sure that kind of move things into the new environment, right? Now, looking at some of the aspects which I discussed throughout, right? Application inventory management. This is some of the. I will not go deeper into it. Pretty much, I covered everything. That's where ZENfra comes into a play when you think of inventory methodology, right? Your identification of the system tracking. You can do all of that customization what you want to do it, and all the documentations, your dependency mapping, right? As I mentioned, more of visualization to create your bundles, move groups, and finally migration planning. And so those kind of things you can really seamlessly execute through ZENfra platform. And one of the things now I have experienced is about resource assessment, right? Who are including the human beings, right? So the technology people, right? So just not about resource. When I say about hardware, software, staff requirements, what happens is that having a dedicated resource to run some of the things, be it your storage architect, your network architect, your server related person, having them available and having a cohesive unit of running this. Because what happens is that when you are in the middle of a migrations, and if you really need somebody, and then having those point of contacts is very vital to have that seamless execution, right? Including they should be aware of it. If there is an on-premises to on-premise movement, having a good understanding about the greenfield deployments, what is being achieved by these people is very important, because you really don't want the team to run after for information, lack of information, to have those necessary changes to be done while they're doing the cutoff. I'm not getting into power planning and integration cable management. That's something you have your data center backend team to support you to make that happen. This is again more into readiness perspective, which I talked about, planning your services, your site orientation, logistic management, which is, I just put it over here because you don't miss out on these aspects when you're thinking of migration. You may have a different stakeholders working on this, not necessarily the people who are really doing the application migrations or server migrations, which is mostly, sometimes in on-premises on-site, or it could be remotely as well. They really don't, be part of it, right? Because everything would be given to them well in advance to make that happen. Right? And then the move coordinations I talked about, ready, personnel ready. If you're, there could be on-site engineers would be ready, available if there is any need basis. Your preparation of the hardwares, when there is a kind of a cold migration, if you're doing it, right? So somebody to shut down, somebody to power on those machines, all sort of things needs to be taken care of. So, and then at the end, as I said, more of a performance validation, your support availability, auditing, decommissioning, and training and documentation handover process is something very crucial after the post migration. Some of the best practice I really want to share with you is about understanding the data usage, formatting requirement based on the data utilization, your regulatory compliance, which I mentioned about it, right, in the beginning of this conversation. Assessing your environments thoroughly before even starting the migrations or the planning, during the planning phase, right? So, of course, business requirements, which are your mission critical applications, what needs to go in first, what needs to be taken time, and things like that. So identifying the business requirements, and if there is any, what are the tolerance level, if there is any unfortunate things happens, of course, could be a data corruptions. So anything can happen, because when you're migrating, when you switch over, what is your rollback mechanism if you have something of that sort? What is your backup strategy already in place? If you really want to have an active sort of an environment, or active passive sort of an environment to check everything is working seamlessly, those kind of things you need to look at it from a business requirement perspective. So I'll take a pause now Any questions you have so far, you can put those in the chat box. And if Fred, if you have another poll, if you can launch that, if you have one in your hand.
So Vipin, that's the last poll. So shall I launch that?
Then hold on to it. Hold on to it. So let me
Yeah.
cover this. I have one or two more slides. That's it. Pretty much to complete it. So some of the challenges and the risk associated with data center migrations, downtime. That's where we heavily invest our time and effort in doing seamless, non-disruptive migrations. That's the specialty of ZENfra as a tool. When it is being leveraged, you can use the best of the technologies to make sure that your seamless execution migration is being completed, right? You also need to look at what I said before, data loss and corruption. Your cost and schedule overruns because of the availability of the resource, delays because of the preparedness for the target and source environments. Those kind of things can delay things, and you may end up in losing out dollars in terms of running the show end to end, right? The compatibility issues, you might have migrated without even knowing that, or not doing the thorough check on what could be my compatibility issues if I moved into a new environment. Will I have any challenges in my legacy application which is running, which has got a hardware dependency or some drivers or any other reasons, right? So those kind of analysis checks which needs to be carefully evaluated. Capacity, performance, are you getting the right level of performances and the capacity what you're looking for after or before migrations, right? And the latency part I covered before. So this is just more of a checklist summarizing everything what I just mentioned about it. Having a good migration goal sheet, having a good resource allocation, your rollback plan, your change management strategy, testing and validation mechanisms, and then readiness evaluations after a successful smooth migration, right? And this is pretty common. Everybody in this group, I'm sure you are already aware of it, types of migrations. This is more into on-premises, non-premises. If you have a co-location, which I mentioned before, there are third parties which gives you, options to have more co-location, placement of the servers and solutions what you have. And of course, if you have a cloud migration to a single vendor or multi-cloud strategy, or even a hybrid cloud solution, right? So where you have some of the workloads running on-premises, and then you have some in cloud. So these are the different types of migrations you can think of. And that's pretty much what I want to share on a high level basis today. And I really want to share some of the coordinates of ours if you really want to reach out to us. And we've been doing this for many, many years and one of the experts in doing migrations. If you have any specific questions, at whatever stage you are today in terms of your migrations, feel free to reach out to us. And Fred also will share our LinkedIn profile and our ZENfra website and our LinkedIn page for our corporate. If you have any questions, please reach out to us in any of these modes. And please keep following up on our webpage and our ZENfra LinkedIn page to have more announcement for the coming webinars, which we go deeper into it. This is more of a high level. We will touch base on how to do a discovery, how to do planning, how do you see the dependencies of your application. So those kind of things, we will go deep dive into it. This is just kind of 30,000 feet above how you look at it. What are the preparations you need to think of when you're thinking of a strategy of a migration, right? So that's on a high level basis, which I want to share for today. And yeah, so Fred can share all those information in the chat. He's also given my LinkedIn profile, so you can reach out to me if you have any questions, whether you are having a migration at this point of time, or if you're planning for future, or you are thinking about how do you, think of doing this. So if you have any of those questions, you can reach out to us. And we, if our sales team will do a follow-up right after this. If you're interested, they'll share some of the forms. You can fill in some of those informations, and then we can, kind of facilitate some of the trial solutions for you, where you can try and test it, how things are really working in the ZENfra side of the world. It's called Success 360. And if you're an individual working for a company and not really into an end-to-end project, if you really want to make your hands dirty and to give that insightful information to your organization, you can still use that at an individual capacity to see. All you need to do, inject some of the logs what you have, and then kind of arrive at more insightful information for you to share with your leadership, for them to take the right decision, right? That perspective also you can look at it from a Success 360 trial license, what you have. So with that, probably everything what I need to cover for today I have shared. And if you have any, I really wanted to throw the last poll question for you, and finally open up for any questions if you have. I'm happy to answer any of these questions. All right, thanks everyone for joining. Have a nice day, nice evening. Bye-bye.